Put your sunglasses on. Let the sun shine in. When we think of the sun, we imagine warmth, energy, and endless power. But like everything in life, with great power comes great responsibility and a few potential risks. I mean, the sun never takes a day off, right? But what if the technology that captures its power does? Have you ever wondered what happens when the very systems that harness the sun's energy, our solar grids, panels and networks, face a threat that's not from nature, but from cyberspace? Sounds like the plot of a sci-fi movie, right? A rogue hacker sitting in a dark room, sipping on a coffee while trying to take down an entire solar grid. It's the kind of stuff that keeps tech experts up at night. And it's not science fiction. In today's world, as solar power expands and becomes more integrated into our lives, ensuring that it's not just efficient but secure is becoming one of the top priorities for the entire industry. Just think about it. We rely on solar energy to power homes and cities. But behind those shiny panels, robust trackers, and cutting-edge technologies lies a complex web of digital systems, all vulnerable to cyber attacks. No one's hacking the sun itself, luckily, but they can hijack our solar energy systems. Whether it's through a vulnerability in a single inverter or a coordinated attack on an entire grid, the risks are real. As more companies, partners and vendors get involved, the security challenges grow. It's like trying to guard a house with too many open doors. In 2021, a well-known oil pipeline company experienced a cyber attack that disrupted its operations, causing fuel shortages across large parts of the United States. Hackers targeted the company's IT systems, affecting communication with critical infrastructure. Though unrelated to solar energy, it serves as a stark reminder that energy industries, regardless of the source, are increasingly vulnerable to cyber threats. If it can happen to oil, it can certainly happen to solar. But don't worry, today we're going to dive into all of this and more. From regular penetration testing to vendor security and risk management, we'll cover how to protect the solar industry from cyber threats and ensure a bright and secure future. So how do we make sure that our sunny days are also safe ones? Imagine this. It's a scorching summer day and your solar-powered factory is running at full capacity. The panels are generating the energy needed to keep production lines moving, the machinery running and the facility cool. But suddenly, a cyber attack hits the whole system, disrupting the entire power supply. Operations grind to a halt, equipment stands idle, and you're left wondering, weren't all of our security protocols up to date? That's the kind of scenario we need to avoid, and today we'll learn how to ensure that it never happens. To help us explore these crucial topics, we have an incredible lineup of experts joining us today. They'll share their insights on everything from supply chain security to the latest technologies in advanced threat detection. And of course, we'll follow our usual format. We'll kick things off with Sunrise, giving you the lay of the land on today's hot topic. Then we'll move into First Light with some fun, rapid-fire questions to get to know our guests. Noon is where we'll have our deep dive discussion with the experts. Next up is Golden Hour, where we dive into some interesting questions based on key concerns raised by customers and gathered through our sales department. And finally, Sunset will ease us out of the episode with some final thoughts and a preview of what's to come next. Hi, I'm Beth Cohen, and this is A Chat in the Sun, a video podcast by Trinasolar. Let's begin. Welcome to our Sunrise. Today, we're diving into a crucial topic, cybersecurity in solar energy. As solar power becomes a vital part of our lives, ensuring its security is more important than ever. Before we begin, let's meet the experts joining us today for this essential conversation. Today, we are joined by Vlad Tanase, Senior IT Manager at TrinaTracker. Vlad has played a key role in enhancing the IT infrastructure at TrinaTracker, leading initiatives like the implementation of next-generation firewall technology and working on ISO 27001 certification. Juan Manuel Gómez, Head of Global Technical Support at TrinaTracker. With over 16 years of experience in the solar tracker business, Juan has been at the forefront of innovation in tracker development and cybersecurity procedures. We also have two special guests with us today. Guillermo Villeta Torres, Senior Manager in Security Governance at S2 Grupo, a leading European cybersecurity consulting firm specializing in critical infrastructure protection. Guillermo brings a wealth of expertise from his leadership roles at Fujitsu and EY. Armand Pascual Roldán, Deputy Director of Industrial Cybersecurity at S2 Grupo. Armand specialises in securing industrial control systems and collaborates with prestigious institutions like the Polytechnic University of Valencia and the Instituto de Energía Solar. S2 Grupo is the go-to company for cybersecurity across Europe and Latin America, with over 20 years of experience, operations in more than 35 countries, and a team of over 700 experts. They are one of the most trusted partners when it comes to cybersecurity solutions. Let's get started. It's time for First Light. In this segment, we like to mix in a little fun while we get to know our guests. Today, we're challenging one of our experts to a ping-pong match while we throw some quick-fire questions their way. Today, my lucky opponent is Juanma. Let's see how well he can handle the pressure on and off the table. Shoes off. Okay.
All right.
Okay, Juanma, you ready?
I'm ready.
Here we go.
Okay.
Woo! What's your favourite way to unwind after a long day?
I would say I like to sit down with my guitar, play a little bit. That takes my stress out.
If you could have dinner with any historical figure, who would it be?
I don't know. I'd say some scientist, but I don't know exactly who at the moment. Let's say Einstein. I don't know.
Are you a morning person or a night owl?
I was a night owl, but now I'm a morning person. I have 52. It's not my time to be a night person.
What's your hidden talent?
Ping-pong? I don't know. I don't think I have a hidden talent. Everything I try to do it showing to anyone, but I'm not sure.
What's one thing that you've always wanted to learn?
Something I wanted to learn. I'd say that I'm always trying to learn something. Every time when I'm learning something, I'm discovering something else to learn. So not something specific, but many things I'm open to always learn.
Mountains or beach?
Beach, definitely.
If you weren't in renewable energy, which career would you have pursued?
I would have liked to be working in something related to computers.
Nice. Best piece of advice you've ever received?
I'd say try to put on other shoes.
Describe yourself in 3 words.
Bald. I'm shy. I try to be a friend of my friends. And I love some art, like music or drawing, something like that.
If you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be?
Anywhere with beach, anywhere with the sea close to me. Yeah, I'd say.
We're getting the hang of this, eh?
Okay.
Nice.
Thank you. Take one is mine.
Oh, ouch.
Ouch. Okay.
Nice playing with you.
Thank you very much. Good play. Good game.
This has been First Light, and we've been playing ping pong with Juanma. Welcome to Noon, where we'll dig deep into today's central theme, cybersecurity for solar energy systems. Solar power is a crucial part of the energy transition, but like all digitalized infrastructure, it is exposed to cyber risks. Given that solar installations rely on interconnected devices, from solar panels to inverters to monitoring systems, cyber threats are becoming increasingly relevant. Let's hear from our expert guests about the latest innovations, the risks we face, and the technologies protecting the future of solar energy. So let's dive right in and welcome Vlad, Juanma, hello, thank you for joining us.
Nice to meet you.
And here we have Armand and Guillermo.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Hello, likewise. Okay, so I've got a series of questions, but also this is a platform for you to express your ideas. And I'd like to start talking a little bit about cybersecurity with solar energy. So what are the main cybersecurity risks facing solar energy, and how can these be mitigated?
Okay. I can start if you want.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so, well, first of all, we have to think that we have apart from those which are specifics for these solar plants, we can have others which are general. So we're talking about two different things. But going more in deep into the solar plants, I would say that there are two main threats that would be, first of all, these solar plants are panels which are generating electricity which has to be injected into the net. So the energy has to be at a certain voltage, certain frequency. This is a labor of inverter. If we can manipulate these values, we can have some problems in the net. We can even go to a blackout. So this is a problem, indeed, for the not only for the installation but also for location of the room. So it's the first thing. And additionally, we could go into the trackers itself. The tracker is the device that is, let's say, positioning these panels to optimize the energy. But trackers are submitted to wind. I mean, the structure is offering wind loads. If we could manipulate the values for the tracker position in a wind event, we could have a total disaster on the plant. So it's very important to make these things safe and avoid these kind of things. And that.
And Armand, what can you tell me about ransomware?
First, I would add something to what Juan said. That's very interesting because usually when we think in cybersecurity, we think that everything is the same. So we have IT, typical technology that we can see in the office. But OT, it's pretty different. So we have to know how the system works, what's important, what's the critical element to protect it. No? When talking about ransomware, that's also crucial because we are used to see ransomware in PCs, in servers, where the problem is that everything is encrypted and you have to pay to get the info again. Okay, paying does not work always. I would not pay. That's the first idea. But when we talk about OT systems, industrial control systems, we have a part of them that it's the same than IT. There is a supervisory level. We have PCs, we have servers. We have the same problem. But what if we are talking about, for example, PLCs, trackers? They are not affected by the same kind of ransomware. What we are seeing now, since a couple of years ago, is that there are a new version of ransomware who is attacking especially that kind of systems. And they are not encrypting the information because information is actually not always important. What is important is the process. So what they are trying to do is making a ransom of the system. They are stopping the process by knowing how the system works. So once you know that the position of the tracker has to be one, and it depends on the information of the weather system, you can change the information that is coming from the weather system just to the system to do something that is not the correct way to do it. So that's the way. So that what I want to say is that of course there are a lot of risks, but you have to know what the risk is in this kind of systems. You have to know how the system works to protect them.
We'll add something also, if you don't mind, which is currently even these installations are every time more, let's say, configure or set up using mobile phones, like, for example, near-field communications. So this is a whole bunch of devices which can have this kind of problem. So it's a very complex thing. So you need to be advised by experts, like they are, to have your risk completely covered.
And what about remote access exploits?
Well, remote access exploits, it's a very big part. It's a very big problem in these situations. And it's not only remote access exploits, the ones we have to take care of. It's also the personal accesses to the sites, right? So nowadays systems, you can access them digitally or physically, right? So we need to add measures to the remote access systems, and also we need to add controls over the physical access to the sites. Nowadays, if you manage to access the site physically, you probably have access to a lot of components that can be vulnerable in front of someone that knows what he's doing, or even someone that doesn't know what he's doing, right? So we need to take care of that problem of access remotely and physically too. And to add to what my colleague said about the ransomware attacks, the information we manage in these power plants, for example, it's very important, right? Because without the information, someone could not actually exploit a system via the ransomware or whatever. And in this case, the data is very, very sensitive, right? So it's very recommended to use a lot of encryption protocols on these sites. And this will add like a layer of security, right? Because the question is very, very open, and there's a lot of security risks, right? So to touch every single one of them, it's very important. You cannot focus yourself on a single security method because you actually have to have a wider view of everything, right? You need to make sure that even the smallest component is safe, and the most important critical system is also safeguarded, right? So. Yeah, it's a very open question. It's a very good question, and yeah.
No, I was going to add that that's something that is curious because you know in pandemics in 2020 we had because of the emergency we had to open a lot of systems to get that remote access in order to be able to keep everything in production. 2 years after that, in 2022. We did a small research for our clients to see if that remote access was still open or not. What we have seen then is that most of them were still open. Last week, there was published a new research, not by us, but another cybersecurity company, but it was very interesting because what they said is that from all that remote access, almost 85% are still open, and most of them are not controlled by the companies that own the systems, just because it was needed, but probably we have now enough time to try to protect that remote, but we have not done it.
It's really difficult to avoid data breaches in those circumstances. And Guillermo, what about the lack of government or the definition of the roles and the responsibility regarding cybersecurity?
I think we need to understand that cybersecurity is such a broad area that we need to take into account as well as the surroundings of the time we're living, as Armand was talking about the pandemic era and so on and so forth. Everything that happened around the pandemic era, we took actions to keep the world running, basically. But as well, we need to take into account that the context of the organization, what they're doing is actually to protect critical infrastructures of energy productions. The lack of government and criteria to define who is in charge, who would need to take actions in case of incident, who is in charge of protecting the company. It is important for us to bear in mind that it is an end-to-end process that we need to handle properly. Not only when something bad happens or something bad occurs, we need to take it into account from the design, from the beginning, from the very planning of the construction of infrastructures of technology. That's why it is important to bear in mind that cybersecurity is not an add-on, but it's not a nice to have, it is a must.
Absolutely fundamental in today's situation. Yeah. And what about the mitigation strategies? I imagine there should be some sort of strong network separation going on. Vlad, do you want to tell me a bit more about that?
Yeah, network segmentation in these cases is crucial, of course. You need to make sure that even if someone gains access to one part of the system, he's not able to spread or gain access to the rest of the system, right? So the segmentation between IT, OT systems, it's very important. Inside of OT too, and the bigger segmentation, the better. Also, in this case, it's very important to limit the access of the users that access the network and to do a role-based access to the network and be very sure that the person accessing that information has the need to do it, right? So also the permission you give to access these networks, they shouldn't be like given in perpetuity. It should be given like in a limited amount of time, considering all points of that access, and not only just giving the access, right, to these networks.
Specifically for the amount of time that's needed to do the job in hand and then close that connection.
Exactly.
And I suppose it would be the equivalent of letting a thief into your house, but then having the interior doors locked as well. So they might have broken the outside wall, but they can't get into all of the rooms.
Exactly. Exactly. It's a very good example.
So I imagine that in order to achieve that strong network segmentation, we need to have very regular software updates, no?
Yeah. I would like to make some small comment to the measures that Vlad has mentioned, which are very important and key for the treatment of this cybersecurity. But I will mention also, obviously there are measures like authentication, like encryption, like the password management, all these kind of things. But I will mention one important point or two important points that are normally so well known or so considered, which is first training to the team, because one of the main doors for this kind of attacks are through social engineering. So this is one important point. And the second one is the supply chain. So you have a lot of suppliers that can have access to your net. So if the attack is to your suppliers, it can also reach your net. So it's very important to cover all the points.
Mm-hmm. That's absolutely true. I would add that when talking about protecting, talking about cybersecurity, of course, we have like 3 areas we have to talk about or to think about. One is technologies, segmentation, specific elements that you have to put in the network to protect the systems, monitoring systems, for example. Technology, procedures, there has to be a government of cybersecurity. There has to be responsibilities on it, so the part of government. And third, and very important, usually we think that's not so important, but it is, which is awareness and training. Mm-hmm. And in 3 of them, we have to adapt the technologies, the procedures, and the awareness and training to the circumstances in OT. That's why the same we were talking before. People that work on designing, on maintaining, and on operating industrial control systems are not experts in cybersecurity. They are experts on their area, and that's normal. So you have to try to make the things understandable. You have to talk the language, the words that they talk, because if not, then they are not going to understand anything. They are not going to follow the procedures. They're not going to understand why there is a device there that does something. So that's very important. So when talking in trying to put measures in OT systems, everything has to be adapted, not just in the technological way, but also in words and in the way you have to make things understandable.
Mm-hmm. And what about endpoint protection?
At the end of the day, endpoint protection is a key factor, since it is the entrance point for any user to come in. Endpoint protection, at the end of the day, we understand it as the link, or the last link on the network to be connected to the, as Armand was saying, to the user. So we need to take into account what Armand was saying. One of key factor is the awareness of the user, but the other key factor is the protection of the endpoint. We need to take into account that at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, as you mentioned, the example of the house, it doesn't matter how strong the entrance of your house is, as long as you don't keep the key properly handled. So we need to take into account that the endpoint protection, it is not only about management patches and upgrades and so on and so forth, but also configuration, also usage and acceptance, also providers and supply chain accesses. There are several key factors that we need to take into account regarding endpoint protection and cybersecurity as a whole.
Mm-hmm. And also, what about access control?
Yeah, the access controls were just the things we mentioned before, and those are the ones that have to be very specific, right? You don't want to just give out access to everyone, right? When we're talking about sensitive data, even inside of our own company, for example, if we take as an example HR access, you don't want to give the same access to everyone, right? Only HR should be able to access that information. And even inside of HR, there should be, for example, like a grade of who has access to what, right? And that access has to be controlled. We seriously recommend to have periodic controls. A lot of companies do them annually, for example. Others do them with like least frequency. And it's very important to keep them updated, have a list of who has access to what, and this is a very good control of security over a system, right?
And I imagine you also need good incident response plans for when things go wrong.
Definitely. It's one of the most important things. You don't want to find yourself in front of an incident, right? And to develop a plan to respond to that incident, right? Exactly. So it's really important to have those incident response plans, those disaster recovery plans already set up before it happens. We're talking before about there's two cases. Armand, what was the thing about the two motorcycle riders? There's two types. The motorcycle riders that crashed and the ones that are going to crash.
Right?
Yeah.
We were talking with
Guillermo.
Yeah.
So you want to be prepared to in any kind of incident. You want to have a plan. You want to have clear responsibilities on how to handle that incident, and that's a very important point.
As Juan said, you have to train people. You have to test the procedures. Yeah. So you have to have it, but you have to train, you have to test. Because if not, then once something happens, then you don't know how to react.
I'll say just on what Vlad mentioned is totally true. The thing is not if you are going to be attacked. The thing is when.
Yes.
So you have to be prepared for that. And the plan, it's not only the procedure you are going to follow, it's also who is responsible for what. And this is very important from the top management to the rest of the managers that have to be in charge of every of the tasks that have to be applied when this is going to happen, when an accident is going to happen. Even now, with the new regulations, you will be forced to notify every time you are attacked. This is not something which is a shame for a company. It's something that is going to happen. So as soon as you provide this information, the better it's going to be solved, the quicker this is going to be controlled. So it's very important.
Exactly.
And even with the new regulations, you have to keep in mind that you have penalties. If you don't follow, you don't have a plan, or you don't notify correctly an incident. So this is not just this is a must. So you have to have it. There's no other way to do it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we need to see cybersecurity not as an add-on. We need to see cybersecurity as a partner to comply with the regulations that come in, but also to protect the business. I think we should not forget that cybersecurity is oriented or should be oriented to business protection. Mm-hmm. We are not doing things by chance or because we find it funny, or
sometimes it is.
Sometimes it is. we find some funny things, but in any case, we don't do it usually because of funny things. We do usually because we need to protect businesses to prevent, protect, and detect possible problems that may occur in the cybersecurity world. And since we need to take into account that since, regardless if it's OT or IT systems, since the world is more and more digital, more and more connected, more and more vulnerable, and since the world is more vulnerable, we need to protect it as well. Mm-hmm. Business, at the end of the day, if a few years back, if you had a physical shop, nobody would, in his sane mind, would just leave the shop open when closing time is due. You would close the gate.
Yes.
So in this cybersecurity world, we should not forget to keep the gates closed when we are off. So training and awareness, protection, endpoint protection, ransomware assessments, ransomware tests, business continuity, those aspects, we should not forget that it is because of the business.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, metaphysically, it's the equivalent of, turning off the lights, pulling the shutter down, turning the key and setting the alarm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's it.
Well, in fact, I think that it should be included into the management system of the company. So, I mean, we in not so far away, we were using about the quality systems which were involved in this kind of controls, whatever plan, improvement. After that, it was the environment. After that was the health and safety. So this is next step. We need to include also this into the management system.
Yes, and I think there needs to be a clear definition of roles and responsibilities.
Exactly.
Yep, exactly. I mean, but not only within the company, but also outside the company. If Juan was talking about third parties, we cannot walk this path alone. We need to take into account that suppliers need to be part of our response plans. If we need help from a supplier to respond an incident and shut down the network again to start providing energy and so on and so forth, we need to take into account that the supplier should be available when needed. And we should not wait until the incident has come. We need to plan it, we need to assess it with them, we need to make sure that they are comfortable and to have someone in hand who we can call to in case of incidents.
I think that's been a really good overview of the possible cybersecurity risks and ways to mitigate them. So if you feel that you've said everything on that topic, I'd like to move on to our next question and start talking about security measures. So what security measures really are most effective in preventing the attacks on energy management systems? And what role do emerging technologies like artificial intelligence really play in this field?
Yeah, this is something which is very interesting. It's a must today. But we have to think that, just talking about the general this aspect before going in deep into the question, I would say that this is ongoing now. I mean, we are not so far away. We were talking about mails, and we had to classify spam or not. Now it's automatic, so it's IE is integrated in our daily task. So this is the same for these things. So all the tasks related to the cybersecurity control are every time more and more equipped with this kind of IA. Equipments and technologies in order to prevent this kind of things.
I would say that, of course, there's a bunch of different security measures. We talked before about the different areas we can work on, but what I didn't mention before that when trying to protect an industrial system, you can find two main cases. The first one is the system is in production, it was constructed years ago, and you have to protect it. And then you have to find a way to protect it without stopping the system, without interrupting what it is doing. The other option is you try to protect a system that is being designed now. And that's the best way to do it, because it's cost effective, it's cheaper, and it's more effective. The measures you put there are going to work better. You can work with your third parties. Yeah. You can ask them to have measures in their devices, for example. So it's
secure by default.
Yeah.
So you're really designing the cybersecurity system at the same time as you're designing the system?
Before, actually. The ideal scenario, or the ideal case scenario, is actually designing the cybersecurity as long as you're designing the prototype itself. We need to take cybersecurity in mind from the very beginning of the existence of the project, or the product, or the process. Cybersecurity should be involved. It is a matter of risk management. In a company, we have several risks that need to be assessed, managed, controlled, and followed up. In the cybersecurity world, there are risks, and those risks, cybersecurity risks, should be assessed, controlled, monitored, and tracked within the life of the company itself. So it's about what Juan was saying about the integrating the cybersecurity into the management role. Those risks should be understandable, as Armand was saying, should be comprehensive for the management. They need to be coherent and cohesive about the real risks that they're facing. You are not talking about some bad thing to happen along the way that may not occur or may occur later. Something will happen with cybersecurity regarding your company, and we need to be focused on preventing and responding within a managerial role. It doesn't matter how many security technical measures you have in place, as long as you don't have a management involved, as you don't have training and awareness for for your mates, you're not going to be able to respond in a proper way.
Sure. This is something like in all the rest of these management systems, it's something which is always based in the same, is plan, do, check, and act. So first you have to find your gaps, then you do a plan. You correct it, but you have not finished. There will be new gaps, so you need to be all right. It's an iteration, it's all the time the same. So it's a wheel, you have to continue with it.
So it's really about developing IDPS, the intrusion detection and prevention systems.
That's one of the points, but I would like to focus this like on a wider view of things. And for example, something that we're very lucky to have here in Europe is a very good legislation of cybersecurity. So nowadays, for example, the new NIS directive, NIS 2, it's a very helpful way to cope with these situations, the risks, everything, because you need a guide basically on how to handle this, right? So you need, for example, in this case, the European Union, it's giving you like what you need to do, right? You need to comply with all these directives that they're enforcing, right? So this is very helpful because it makes you, right, comply with everything. Just the same like when you're developing your ISO 27001. It's like it makes you go over all the controls inside the company, so you actually gain a view of what your company has, what the problems your company has, and you have to work on them and to solve them, to mitigate the risks. So that's very helpful.
And what role does encryption play in all of this?
When talking about encryption in industrial systems, probably now we should focus in the boundaries. So where is when the data goes out of the system? If we nowadays protocols that are being used inside the industrial systems are not encrypted. Usually not. Of course, the different companies that produce devices, they are improving their protocols, and some of them are already encrypted, but not everything. So we have to try to put that encryption in the data that is traveling outside, and when possible inside. But just we have to know that it's not always possible.
On this, I would like to add something on the comments, which is related to these products and encryption and the safety. Additionally to the NIS that Vlad mentioned, there are another directive, another law, which is the CRA. And this is going to be also used by the European Commission, by Europe, to control the manufacturing of the new devices which have to be connected to net. So it will affect to computers, will affect to IoT, will affect to those nets or these structures all will be connected to net. And we have to think that up to today, even some very basic devices like, for example, a baby monitor can be hacked. So you can enter to your net, it can do a lot of things. So this proposal for this CRA is to try to keep this control, and every new device which is going to be sold or supplied or manufactured in the EU have to be a minimum safety requirements.
And if I may add, CRA has many pillars, but one of the two main pillars is actually the comprehensive use and risks of the product. So talking about awareness and training and so on and so forth, the end user need to be aware. And CRA, it's very, very clear on that. We need to assess the product and explain what the product is about and what the risks of using it is maybe facing. And the second pillar is actually not only the manufacturing process, but also the maintenance. It's not a plug and play. We have been seeing along the years that we can have, or we can buy or acquire several products in the market, and the manufacturer, the seller, just forgets about it. CRA comes into place just to make sure they don't forget, make sure they maintain the product, they update the product when possible accordingly, and so on and so forth, to make sure that not only the product is not vulnerable at the beginning or at the selling point, but also along the life of the product.
And that's especially important when talking about industrial systems, because when we are talking about a PC, you renew your PC every 5 years, maybe. You're not to renew an industrial system every 5, probably 15, 20, 25, 30 years.
Yeah.
So you have to be aware of that the lifetime of that kind of systems are very long, and you have to be complying that CRA or that idea. So you have to manage that for in the long time.
Especially with the evolution of this
Yes.
kind of.
At the end of the day, I think it's not a matter of regulations and so on and so forth. It's a change of mindset regarding cybersecurity products, management, and so on and so forth.
And what about the role of firewalls and VPNs?
Well, talking about firewalls, VPNs, and so on and so forth, and linking it with the other question about remote access, at the end of the day, we need to take into account that the protection of the information, whether it's encrypted or not, within the company, within the boundary of the company or outside the company, need to be managed from a user perspective regarding the training, awareness, and so on and so forth, but within the technological aspect. Using secure accesses, using protection regarding networks and packet filtering, firewall 7th layer, so on and so forth. Technological aspects to protect information to be badly handled, badly accessed, or leaked, which may happen. We need to take into account that VPN access is not since, and moreover since the pandemic and the COVID and so on and so forth, is not something we may have. It is something. It's not. Again, it's not a nice to have. It's a must.
Yeah, and I imagine that user training is really fundamental in all of this.
Definitely. It's one of the biggest parts in cybersecurity, the human factor, right? So it's one of the weakest links in cybersecurity, just because a very, very good targeted attack, like for example, a phishing attack, can trick someone, even if you're very familiar with technology, right? Everyone can be victim of a phishing attack, for example. If you combine a phishing attack with personal information you may gather from that user, you can increase your click rate a lot, right? Because if you receive a message and you see your personal details on that message and you see like sensitive information of yours, you can definitely think, well, this may be true, right? Yeah. So training users, it's a very important piece in a company, just because you need to make sure that users are aware of the latest trends in technology. You need to train them about like very basic things sometimes that they may fall for. So we definitely highly recommend user training.
Yeah, there's no point in having fabulous systems if users don't know how to use them, exactly, or just voluntarily hand over information because they've been duped or aren't aware of the latest tricks out there.
Definitely.
So moving on to monitorization capabilities, Guillermo, do you have anything more to add?
I think when talking about cybersecurity, we need to understand that it's not only when something bad happens. Mm-hmm. We need to be able to detect if something bad is about to happen. Mm-hmm. And there might be very clear signals that something is going on, and there may be very quiet and very subtle signals that we need to take into account. Monitorization is actually the eyes that allow us to see what's going on within the company. Mm-hmm. Monitorization capabilities and response plans, DRPs, everything related to what is happening just before an incident is happening, an incident is about to happen. We need to handle it very, very, very quietly. Since monitorization capabilities within a company such as energy systems is not only about personal data, which of course it is, but it is about the production of energy within a country. Mm-hmm. We're not talking about some add-on to our lives. We are talking about the energy consumption, and every day we are consuming energy. Therefore, the monitorization capabilities are before an incident within a critical infrastructure. It is fundamental for the production and the production of the company by itself, and the response capabilities and detection capabilities.
Mm-hmm. And sorry, if I can add, and when putting in place that monitoring systems, again, it's essential to know how the system works, because you are going to need products that are going to monitor that have the same protocols that you use in the systems. You are going to have an architecture that is able to be monitored. So it's very important to mix everything we have been talking today. So it's needed to know the systems. It's needed new technology.
And what about the role of emerging technologies like AI in all of this?
Well, I think as Vlad mentioned, the thing is that these kind of technologies are emerging both for attack and both for defense. So you have to be updated if you want to defend, to have some defense to these attacks in your company.
Yes, both sides are being updated at the same time. You need to keep one step ahead of potential cyber attackers.
Exactly. So you cannot stop. You cannot implement your message to this, especially when this kind of business, the software, hardware, these kind of things are evolving so fast, and the IA is evolving so fast. So if you want to be prepared, you have to constantly monitor, you constantly make some audits to your company to check if you are prepared or not for the current situations.
And how is artificial intelligence being used in threat detection?
Well, it has a very, very big role nowadays, since many attacks use AI, right? So on both sides, if AI is used on the attack, you need to have AI on your defense system, right? Nowadays, firewalls, for example, threat detection, most of the next generation firewall used today, they come with this technology where they can spot an attack very quickly, like a human couldn't do it, right? Especially because the attack is not made by a human. The human, actually, the hacker, let's say so, programs the attack, but the attack is very, very fast, or you couldn't detect it with as a person, right? So you need to have AI on the side of the defense too. It's very important.
To respond much more quickly.
Exactly.
And how about, speaking about automated responses, are there any other areas where automated responses are being developed?
When talking about IDS and IPS, we are also using IA for detecting patterns. So, of course, until now, we've been using signatures, which is the most common way to detect something wrong is happening in your network. But now, EA is giving us the possibility of detecting more difficult patterns that a person cannot detect. So yeah, so that's the way to use also the technology in the right side of the of the cybersecurity world. No? And one thing is very important. So we work in a cybersecurity company. When we try to protect systems, actually what we do before that is try to attack them, because knowing how the attackers work is the way to think about how you are going to protect the systems. So that's why it's important to know what they are using, what technologies are they using, what methods are they using, just to be able to protect against it.
Do predictive analytics play a role in this? So, you know what you're expecting to see, and then you see something different, and that sets the alarm bell off?
Most of the cases, yes. We understand what is a normal procedure or process within the company. We understand what is the usual aspect of the measures that we are taking in place and the usual values or everything we are monitoring and so on and so forth. And if we detect an anomaly, if we detect something that goes straight up, we may it doesn't always mean that something is happening, but it's sure we should take a look.
That's a really good way of staying one step ahead, knowing what you're expecting to see, and then if something is amiss.
It's not reactive, exactly. It's preventive. So.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, and finally, what can you tell me about self-learning systems?
I think it's something in the same thing. Yeah, I mean,
it's the base of the
exactly AI. So I mean, if you have a system which is capable to be is installed with AI, the good thing from this is that it can learn from the attacks. It can learn of the patterns he mentioned before, so it can create new strategies for new situations, for new he can predict something that you have not teaching. So you have teach the technology with some special pattern, but if these patterns change, it's capable to learn of these changes. So it's important. But I think it's something also related to same thing. So what is capable to do AI? If you're capable to learn from the attacks, maybe you are capable also to learn from the defense. So you can also create new attacks. So
Yes, I really liked your analogy talking about having to stay one step ahead and putting yourself really in the shoes of the attacker and thinking, okay, so if I wanted to break in, what would I do?
Exactly.
And then that enables you to defend much better.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a never-ending cycle.
Yeah.
It's always the same.
Yeah, and that's the idea. It's a cycle. So cybersecurity is not a product. So you are wrong if you think that if you buy a firewall, you're going to be protected. It's not that that's not the approach to the problem. The thing is, it's a process. You have to put in place a lot of things inside and also sometimes outside. So that's the idea. Yeah.
Excellent. And finally, there's one further question that I have for you and something that I wanted to talk about during our discussion this morning. How do you think can companies implementing solar energy solutions ensure the security of their networks and prevent cyber attacks?
Well, I think we already touched this topic, but a very highly recommended method is for the company to comply with ISO certification, like the 27001. And this will help to give the company a base of security, right? This certification, you can achieve it with high standards, medium standards, or even low standards, right? But it's something you already have. You have a guide to follow. You have something to review annually, maybe, and to keep working on it. So this will help a company achieve a control over its whole system. And it's a very, very good method that for us worked really, really good. A certification like this will help, for example, in the case of a new legislation we have in Europe, which is the NIS2. And achieving an ISO basically almost helps you comply with the new directive, right? So it's a very, very good recommendation for a company to have a standard like this one achieved.
Okay, so what would be the best practices then for really ensuring network security step by step?
It's a very complex question and a long one.
Yes.
I don't think.
Well, I mean, we could start, for example, with a risk assessment.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, I'd say if you go directly to the NIS2, it can give you something like a guidance of what you have to take into account. So if I could mention some of them, I would say that you have to do a management of your risk. So you have to something like analyze what risk you have, which data, which critical level is the data. You will have also to analyze to get a management of the incidents that you're having with a notification and so on. One important point is that you have to have measures to keep your business working. Let's say not stop the activity, something like continuing your activity. And then you have to control the supply chain, what kind of products you are going to acquire for your company. And additionally, which is more important, is we have mentioned before, training is mandatory. So all your organization have to have knowledge of what happens and what ways to go into your company can find. Apart from this, obviously, you have the encryption, authentication, all that kind of things. But I would say that these are the main points that the NIST is focused on.
And of course, having a really sound cybersecurity policy in place and then to go on and monitor that.
Definitely. Also, I would like to add that it's very difficult for a company to achieve all these steps by itself. So it's definitely basically mandatory to require help of an expert cybersecurity company that will help you put in place all these measures, right? So it's a very important point to ask for this guidance and support for an external provider that's already it's already expert in those matters, and it will give you the guidance.
Yeah, that's true. So it's also important to have like internal capabilities. That it has to be. But as cybersecurity, it's a very wide area of knowledge, and it is evolving day by day. I think that there has to be people that is just focused and knowing what is happening and what is changing, just to be able to protect systems so complex and so important like power plants.
Yeah, like mentioning something like a similar, I would say that if you have something like you're feeling bad, you go to doctor, and then he provides he something like gives you some ways to get better. But next time you feel bad, you are not going to. You should not take only the measures you think. You should go again if something is happening. So you're going something like constant. Let's say guidance on what you have to do to improve.
Yes. There's a constant evolution, of course, that requires regular audits, regular penetration checking, regular surveillance, and regular evolution in line with current developments.
Exactly.
And finally, I'd really like to talk about supply chain security, because this is, it's not just the business itself, but the whole chain.
Yeah. Here, I would say that you have also, as Vlad, I think, and they mentioned before, you have two parts. You have the logical part and the physical part. So you should apply some measures to get a supply chain, because this is a backdoor for your system. So when we're talking about the physical, we should have something like inspections of factory. We should have something like devices to prevent manipulation on the deliveries. The documentation should be updated, and we should do something like inspections before and after the let's say the load has been delivered. But also in terms of the logical aspect, I mean digital things, we should have some suppliers that should be certified. You should audit them. You should get some inspections to them. You should even in some areas in the world you have something. I don't think this is so clear in Europe, but they have something like inspection of the penal antecedents or something like that.
Yes.
This is depends on the area, but you have a lot of things that you have to apply to your supply chain if you want to have a backdoor there. You can have everything ready on your company, but obviously you have other points that can be the entrance.
Mm-hmm.
And if I may, you need to take that into account before actually partnering with a company. We need to take that into account when signing the contract. We need to take it into account before signing the contract. We need to talk about the SLAs. We need to talk about the response capabilities. We need to talk about the time capabilities. Not before it's a nice to have, but because we have regulations that, for instance, GDPR states that you have 72 hours to notify a security incident. Yeah. If you have a supplier which is not capable of contacting you within 72 hours to talk about the cybersecurity incident, you will not comply with the law. Mm-hmm. And the fine will not be for the supplier, it will be for your company. Okay. So we need to take into account that it's not about. I mean, within the companies, we have always had these approval processes of suppliers, of new suppliers. Yeah. We need to take cybersecurity into that role, and it is a chain. So basically, it is a chain, like a physical chain. We need to take cybersecurity as one of the pieces of the chain. We need to take into account the cybersecurity aspects within our suppliers. It is or a lack of cybersecurity capabilities in our suppliers increases the risks within the company. It's not only for the supplier, it's actually for my company as well, a risk of having a partner that is not ready to prevent, detect, or respond to an incident. It puts me at risk.
Yes.
Yeah. The thing is, I fully agree, and in fact, if you don't want to do it because you are afraid of what happened to your company in terms of attack, you have to do it because you will have penalties. We're talking about very big penalties from European Commission, so we can have, I don't remember exactly which was the amount, but I think it was
4% of the annual...
Of the annual income, or 10 million euros,
20
right?
million. Up to 20 billion.
Up 20.
And it's whichever is the greater of the two figures, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So of course that's no laughing matter, and really should take the responsibility seriously.
But we have to take into account another things which are we are not when we're talking about this kind of attack. Everybody think like we are going to be stolen the data, which is okay, right? But this has some effect on other points that we are not considering. So it's you have an impact in your brand. Mm-hmm. You can have penalty. For example, imagine that you have not controlled plant or something like that, and the customer is not going to have the predicted production, so they can claim you for that production. Or you can have legal aspects coming on board on front when you are having something like protection data from something like the workers or something like that, with big penalties also. So it's a lot of implications that you have to take into account, not only the fact of the data itself.
And the image of the company as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, which is because measuring a fine with it's a 4% of the annual income of 20 million, it is very easy to measure. But the image of the company, the perception of the clients within for the company, it is very important to take into account that the aspects regarding cybersecurity affects the image of the consumers for the company.
Yeah, that loss of image, that loss of credibility, loss of confidence in the brand, in the business. You'll lose, your shares will lose value. A disaster, basically.
Yeah.
Well, it's been wonderful talking today. I think our time's coming to an end. Before we go, I'd like you to just summarize in a couple of words or a sentence your conclusions that you would take away from this discussion today.
I'll go first if you want to.
Great, thank you, Guillermo.
Cybersecurity is a must. It is not a nice to have.
I would add to that, cybersecurity is not a product, it is a process. And you have to be aware of technology, processes, and people.
Great.
I would say another two things to what I mentioned, which is very important that everybody is trained. This is not a matter of 4 or 5 people. Everyone is involved in the cybersecurity. And also I would say that this kind of things is not a shame if you have been attacked. It's very important that you notify this information because it creates a possibility to get a higher defense level.
Exactly. Well, my take on the cybersecurity nowadays is that cybersecurity is part of the business. It's not something external to it. And transparency in cybersecurity is key and fundamental nowadays. So yeah, that's my take on it.
Thank you so much for sharing your ideas, your time, and your expertise.
Thank you.
Guillermo, Armand, Vlad, Juanma, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for joining us. This has been A Chat in the Sun. It's time for the golden hour. Joining us today is Carlos Zulbarán, Sales Manager at Trinasolar. Let's hear what's on the minds of customers and get some expert insights from our panel to answer them. So let's go to the first question, Carlos.
How can organizations ensure compliance with global security regulations, such as those in the European Union?
That's a great question. What do you think, Juanma?
Well, I would say there are several guides that you can follow to fulfill with this kind of things, which are submitted by several institutions, like it would be the CCM in Spain, or the ENISA, or INCIBE. But even the NIS2 is a good guide because it's giving to you this important information. But once again, I have to mention that we are a solar company, but we are not experts in cybersecurity. So it's good. It's very important to have external people like they are, like S2, that can guide you during the process to get your company protected.
And my final question for today is, what steps are we taking to monitor and mitigate any potential risks in the ever-evolving cybersecurity landscape? Thank you very much for your time and for your insights.
What do you think, Armand?
I think that you are doing great. So you have that both sides you have to have. You have an internal team. You're working on that inside your company, but you also know that you need to be aware of everything that is evolving in cybersecurity. So you have to have partnerships with other companies that are specialists in that area. So I think it's a good way to be protected in the long time.
In the long run.
In the long run.
Thank you so much for your insights. And thank you to Carlos for joining us. This has been our Golden Hour. As As we wrap up today's episode of A Chat in the Sun, we've had an insightful conversation about the importance of cybersecurity in solar energy. Our experts here walked us through the major challenges, the evolving threats, and the innovative solutions that are safeguarding our solar future. Thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget to follow us on social media, share your thoughts, and keep up with all of our episodes at achatinthesun.trinasolar.com. Until next time, stay secure, and as always, keep on chasing the sunshine. Goodbye for now.